What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. So, as you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences that hopefully will help move that dial towards you becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you in your life. So, this guest is someone who has a pretty exciting backstory, being on a team that set a world record, accomplishing crazy feats from a very young age, which I'll let her get into. But to officially introduce Lucy Lawrence. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, again. So we did round one. It never went through just because, I messed up the file. So we're just going to roll into it. But the first thing I want to talk about is the Conquer 100 project. So for ultra endurance fans like myself, I'm sure people will know what we're talking about. But for people who aren't crazy in the head and do that stuff like me, if you want to explain what Conquer 100 was and then the role you played in it, because you had a main role at what, 17, 18 years old?
I was 18. It was my senior year of high school.
Yeah, so roll people through what it was and then what you did for it.
Okay, so the Conquer 100 is a world record that my dad did. He is most commonly known as the Iron Cowboy. And what the Conquer 100 is it was 100 consecutive full distance triathlons. For those of you who don't know, a full distance triathlon is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon. So he did one of those every day from March 1st to June 8th. And we actually ended up doing one more, so to June 9th, with no breaks. And what I did for that, I was the campaign manager. And I actually pulled up, I had a list in my phone of kind of my to-do list. And so I pulled that up just so I could kind of give you guys like a brief understanding of what it was. So it was running social media. I was working with all the sponsors. I was also planning the final party. We were doing lives, random tasks that came up. For example, we had a support vehicle driver that would follow James. So if a support vehicle driver bailed, I had to fill that in. And I also had to reach out every day and make sure people were coming. We had a psychological team that was studying him. And there was just all sorts of little things like that that filled up my days as working as the campaign manager.
Very quick side note, because you probably had to call your dad James so people knew that like you were talking about him. Is it weird to say your dad's name instead of saying dad? Or are you used to it?
So I'm very used to it. I feel like one of the reasons is because, he's like this figure that's motivational and inspiring. And me and my siblings, we think it's kind of funny and we like to tease him about it. And so we always, just to be funny, we always just call him Iron Cowboy James because that's his Instagram name. And so we'll be like, wow, Iron Cowboy James, you're so inspiring. And so, of course, we love him and he's taught us to be the people who we are today, but it's still like this little family joke that we have running. And so because of that, I feel like it's less weird that I have to call him James for work. But I'll notice sometimes his contact name in my phone is Popsy. And so I'll like type Popsy into my email. I'm like, oh, wait, wrong. No, it's James. It's James. But generally it's been okay.
All right. Yeah, that was just something because I remember growing up, it was like a cardinal sin to call your parents by their first name. So that was just kind of a side note that popped up in my head. But one thing that I think a lot of people will benefit from, because you have a lot of good insight, I think, from our last conversation about the lessons that you learned and like main takeaways that other people could have from the whole Conquer 100 experience. So what were some lessons that you learned to implement in your own life personally? And then what were some of kind of like the general truths that you recognized throughout that process?
So something that was huge, I love to say this, it's always my thing, is if someone's like, what's one thing you've learned, is that there's always a way. I feel like in today's day and age, I don't know, I'm a college student, I'm living with 20-year-olds, I kind of have a good insight to the new upcoming generation, I guess. And people are like, oh, it's hard, I'm not going to do it. For example, over the summer, I took a summer block and it's 21 credits. And for perspective, a full summer block is 6 credits. And I was taking 21. And I had people trying to talk me out of it. And it was so weird that I was like, oh well, I want to graduate by December, so I'm just gonna crank this out. Like there's a way to get this done. And people were trying to talk me out of it. And that just like blew my mind because thinking back to the Conquer 100, there were so many things that went wrong and people who didn't play their part. And we had to fill the gaps. And it was frustrating. And there were days that I thought my dad was going to end me because I had made a few mistakes and things like that. And my mom would just be like, no, there's like a way to solve this, you know? And so I feel like hearing my parents say that and growing up, and my parents would always say, like, well, we were never given an opportunity to quit, right? Like, hey everyone, today we're going to do the 4 mile fun run. So I hope you guys are ready. And we're like, what? It's Thanksgiving. Why are we doing a 4 mile fun run? We're like, we didn't train for this, you know. Mom's like, well, you'll find a way to finish, you know. And so it's just that lifestyle which I felt I was able to implement during the Conquer 100, but also the Conquer 100 was like a huge testimony of that and has been able to help me push through, especially because during the Conquer 100, it was my senior year of high school, and I was on track to graduate high school with my associate's degree. So as senior in high school, I was taking 15 credits at the local university, Utah Valley University. And every day I thought I was going to die. And Mom's like, it's okay, you'll make it through. I remember the same thing happened when I was in physics class, my sophomore year of high school. I did not think I was going to make it. And during the Conquer 100, she was like, remember when you made it through physics? That was 2 years ago. And so just like little things like that is just a huge manifestation. And I think a lot of people don't have that mindset.
Yeah. I also view that as a muscle. Like it's something that, I mean, you and probably your whole family now are like the equivalent of Superman strength when it comes to grit, just because of the exposure and the practice that you've had at such a high level. But for people who feel like they don't have grit, it's not just like a born trait. There are people who just like charisma or intelligence, like some people just get a little more off the bat, but hard work will beat talent in that category as well as many others, where if you're willing to put yourself into situations where you have to use grit to accomplish the goal, you'll start developing that muscle and being able to flex it more and doing it under more pressure. And so that's something I think is really cool, that not just your dad, but all of you in different lenses showed what it looks like to have grit at a very high level. Now, this story to me is so cool. The 55Ks in 50 days as a kid.
Yeah.
You developed that muscle very early. So tell people about that story, because that's something I think a lot of people would never either let their kids do, or the second the kid complained, they'd be like, oh yeah, you can stop. Like, tell them about that story.
So in 2015, my dad, before the 100, there was a whole lot of stuff before that. And 2015 was the most recent thing before that. And he did 50 full distance triathlons in 50 states in 50 consecutive days. So every day he would do the full distance triathlon, more commonly known as an Ironman. And he would sleep in a car and we'd drive overnight to the next state and he'd do it again. And he was struggling, and I hate not being able to help. My mom has always told me, oh, she's an old soul, you know, and like, I feel like a big part of that is just wanting to take care of people and solve everybody's problems. And of course, when my dad's doing 50 full distance triathlons, obviously there's nothing I can do about that, especially because I was 12. I couldn't even drive, for heaven's sake, to help my mom run errands or do anything. And so we did a sanctioned 5K every day, and I decided to do all of the 5Ks just because I knew that the family meant the world to my dad. And so if he had his family there with him and support, it would be helpful for him, even if I was only there for 3 miles a day. I would always be like, please, can I please hold your water? He's like, I mean, I guess you can hold my water, but I just like was desperate for a way to help. And so that's the way I decided to channel that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's cool about that is motivating is the run is the last part. So like, I'm sure as he's going through the swim, as he's going through the bike, you almost set up that bit of like a lightning rod for him to like pull him to the run. So it's like, no dad will ever want to let his daughter down. And so like putting yourself in that key position right at the end too. So that he's like, she's waiting for me for that 5K. If I don't show up, what's gonna happen? So I think that was a really, I don't know if that was intentional or if it just kind of like happened to be you wanted to run the 5K and it just happened to be in that spot. But that's a really smart move to just like put yourself right at the end there.
So it wasn't intentional, but he actually says that in his presentation. He talks about teamwork, and he says in his presentation, I had a 7 o'clock appointment with my daughter and I couldn't miss it. And so part of me feels like a lot of it was hindsight. Like we didn't even recognize it until after it happened that even played a factor in, but just acknowledging it, I feel like is really cool. Like it's cool to be a part of something big, you know?
Yeah. So one thing I'm curious about, because, and obviously this is a little different, but I almost equate it to like an abbreviated stint of what I would assume like childhood stars go through, where like part of their just normal kid experience gets sacrificed, especially during the 50 and then during the 100. Was there anything in there where like you had that thought in the back of your head of like, what would I be doing right now if, you know, my family wasn't driving across the United States doing full distance triathlons? Was there any part of that, or did you feel fully immersed in the experience to where like that didn't really cross your mind?
At the beginning, I was a little sad because I was missing the last week of 6th grade. So I was missing the dance, I was missing the graduation, I was missing the pool day. And I was like, dang, like everyone's talking about this in 2nd grade, and now I have to miss it. But then I would say to myself, well, I can either be in Hawaii or I can be at 6th grade graduation. Okay, let's think about this. But I feel like when I was there, me and my siblings mom had 5 kids in 6 years. And so we're all really close. And so for us, really, it was just a big trip with our friends, like, because we are all each other's best friends. And so that's in a way how we saw it. We were just stoked to be living in a motorhome. And the motorhome was small. We had a lot of people in there. So there was all 5 of us kids were on a full bed. We just slept like the short way and had our feet hang off the end. And to us, we're like, yeah, this is a big sleepover. Towards the end, I missed my friends a lot, obviously, because like 3 months away from friends as a 12-year-old, that's like life corrupting, you know. But overall, me and all my siblings just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I was in kind of mentally prepping myself for this interview. I'm also planning a decently long road trip coming up earlier next year, and I was thinking about the first maybe like 5 days to a week is going to be a lot of just time in the car, and then like a quick stop, check a place out, and then back in the car and go. And I, for a fraction of a second, was starting to have that negative voice in my head of like, man, that's a lot of time just sitting in the car. And then I was remembering that I'm talking, you know, I'm like, they went to 50 states in 50 days. I'm like, you can't at all complain about a little bit of extra driving to go just do some touristy stuff. So like, again, just kind of going back to that grit. But so, okay, so that was kind of the personal lesson is there is a way. Like it may not be comfortable. You may have to sacrifice some things. There may be a lot of delay in the gratification that comes at the end of it. But in terms of kind of universal truths, let's say the people who were showing up for like one day of the race or one portion of the race, and then the people who were volunteering, what was something that you kind of saw as like a universal truth that came out of it? Was it a sense of camaraderie? Was it, again, that just, you know, grit and you can do anything? What were one or two of the things that you saw when you just looked around at the athletes, the volunteers, the families, all of it?
It totally was camaraderie. There were people who we didn't know, and they had just heard about this through grapevine. They thought, oh my gosh, that's like 15 minutes from me. That's half an hour from me. And we had people that would come out every single day. Our bestie Danny, shout out to Danny, he came to a couple of the runs, and then eventually he came to the swim at 5:30 every morning, and he'd flip the numbers for us. and he would do the last, my dad always knew that Danny would be there for the last 6 miles, and they just became like besties. Of course, my dad has a ton of besties, but he made it way up there on that list. And then we had a family that would come out in a costume every day, just something with like a pun about the day, and it was just something for James to look forward to. And Neaters, we love, it wasn't like the franchise, but just the Provo Neaters, they brought James dinner every day on the run. And so there were just these people who would come out and make the biggest difference. We had a really good friend, well, a friend because of the Conquer 100. His name's Bart. He would come early to the run and give the speech to everybody so James wouldn't have to. And sorry, I keep going back and forth between my dad and James. But he would come to the speech and be like, hey, you need to stay on this side. There's other people. And he would really help, like, I don't know, I guess corral all the people, because we would take up the whole trail and people would get mad. And also there were days that the cyclists would look at the weather and say, this weather is terrible. We have to go bike today because no one's going to be there. And so just the fact, like, none of these people gained anything from the success, right? But they just wanted to be part of it, and they wanted to help, and they wanted to be part of something good, obviously, because we were raising money for charity aside from all the world record things, and aside it like being for a career. And it was just beautiful to see everybody come out, just to come out and be part of it, and just to make friends. And like, there are so many circles that have grown. And with that, it's leading by example, right? If James wasn't out there, none of those people would have had the opportunity to make those relationships, right? And so sometimes I just talk to people, and 20-year-olds, I just lose hope in humanity. I'm like, this is not their mission. But then I think about this and I'm like, but there's so much more, and I feel like it's hard to have that perspective, but it's important to be intentional about having that perspective.
Yeah. One thing that comes to my mind, though, and it sounds like you're already doing such a good job of this, is if you look around at the people around you and you don't see the example being set, maybe just hold up a mirror and set the example yourself.
Yes.
It sounds like you're already doing such a good job of that, of people telling you you're nuts doing that 21 credits, and you basically just saying, watch me.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's kind of the avenue, at least right now, that you're indulging isn't the right word, but you're pouring in that grit energy into. But after the Conquer 100, was there any challenge or any adventure or any feat that popped into your head where you're like, that's the one I'm going to tackle?
I feel like, so right after the Conquer 100, it was almost in reverse. I just like completely, I wanted to shut down because when you tell people about the Conquer 100, it sounds like whatever, but like living it was a new experience. Like we've been getting interviewed for the documentary, and I can't remember stuff because I've like blocked it out because of the trauma. And so after the Conquer 100, I wanted to shut down, but I didn't get that chance because that's the prime opportunity to take, that's the prime opportunity to attack the business side of things. And so I just like attacked. And then I just like crashed, which was really bad. I just crashed for a minute. But then, oh, I forgot about this. And then I crashed. So we went to Mexico and I crashed. And then my dad comes up to me and is like, hey, you want to do 75 hard with me? And so I did that not September. I started that the July after Conquer 100. And so that was really, I don't know. I don't know if you should publish this, but I did not think it was hard. It's probably just because is my lifestyle. It was more just inconvenient. I'm like, oh, this is so annoying that I have to work out twice around my school schedule, but really my mindset was just on graduation because I had graduated high school with my associate's degree. I was just like, I need to finish my college degree as soon as possible because I hate school and I'm already practically there. And so it was, in summary, it was attack business, crash, 75 hard, college crank. And I'm still in the college crank, but this is my last semester, so I'm very close. And then after this, I don't really know what I want to do. I might stay with Iron Cowboy. I might not. I might do something crazy. I don't know. But everything's just kind of up in the air right now. But I definitely do not have the same motivations to do crazy things like my dad. Just
Yeah.
seeing all the work that we put into it, I'm like, I've already done that twice and I'm over it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, again, you are hitting that extraordinary level, which I think that word gets maybe overused, but this is a great example of extraordinary. Is like you said, the full course load is 6. So you're almost quadrupling the full
Yeah.
course load. So you are really intensely going after things. It's just not in the athletic arena.
Yeah.
And that's something, especially on this podcast, as someone who is a fitness coach, an athlete, like I usually associate those big ambitious things with athletic endeavors,
Yeah.
but I do my best to kind of like pull back and look at it with like a macro scope and tell people it doesn't have to be going out and running a marathon or trying to hit a new PR in the gym. It can be going out and trying to meet 50 new people and like building
Yeah.
up a new network. It can be asking out that cute guy or girl that you keep staring at creepily and not doing anything. Like any type of bold action falls into such a growth category. And it kind of reminds me of, I'm doing research for a workshop that I'm putting on in a couple of weeks. And there are 4 fundamental human regrets. And this is people of essentially all ages. I don't know what the youngest end of the spectrum was for this case study, but it was a couple 100,000 people who sent in their regrets in life across demographics, age, race, sex, culture, all of it. And they boiled it down to 4. And one of them was not taking bold action. So
Yeah.
you're taking bold action. So you don't necessarily have to worry about looking back at that.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Brave Not Perfect. It's definitely very directed at women. I would not recommend reading it if you're a dude, but it talks about that same thing. She's like, I didn't do anything crazy until I was 30. She's like, I waited all my life, or like not all my life, but like all 30 years with just sticking to the status quo, you know? She's like, that was a huge regret because I've done so many cool things since then. I wish I had started earlier. And like you were saying, that can be anything. You know, that can be, I don't know, design, like practicing designing book covers if that's like what your dream is, you know?
Yeah. Is that what you're doing? Is that why you said that? That's like a really specific one.
No, I was just like looking around my room, like what's like a really random hobby? Because I'm at my desk, so I have like all this random stuff right here.
Yeah, but it's so true. I've got one client, if she's listening, she'll know that I'm talking about her.
This
So
is how you're gonna
she's,
know if she's listening.
yeah, if you know who this is. So she's retired and she had a very routine life where it was like worked the same job for a few decades, ate the same foods, went the same places, saw the same people kind of set up. Now, obviously there was some variation, but more or less it was like a creature of habit type of lifestyle. And so part of what I do with my clients is not just like pick up heavy things and put it back down, but the actual lifestyle side of things. And so I said, all right, I want you to put 50 things down, like a bucket list of 50 items. And so she did. And I said, all right, you have till the end of the year to do 20 of them. And so we've done like, this is someone who I've gone on trips with, and we've done some adventurous stuff, and we've got more things kind of queued up, but it's exactly that. It's that adage of, I think Elon Musk is quoted with this, but if you have 3 weeks to clean your room, you'll take 3 weeks. If you have 30 minutes to clean your room, it'll
Yep.
take 30 minutes. And so it's once you decide to put a little bit of pressure on yourself to make the thing happen, that you'll make it happen. And that's with these gritty things, but also with just living an adventurous, bold lifestyle.
Yeah, I've found that I have to be intentional about living a bold lifestyle in a less serious way too. So I feel like that goes both ways. Living a bold lifestyle in, you know, like career choices or family choices or like what your style is going to be, but also like what adventures do you want to go on? And your adventure that could be a walk, like whatever your adventure needs to be, but like intentional about both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just figuring out, and I'll roll through kind of the four just because I think this would be a good segue into like priming people with what to put focus on. So there was a point in my life where all I did was bold action and I had zero foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
so for someone who is that like Vin Diesel, live life a quarter mile at a time personality, might make sense to also think about like, will your future self thank you for the foundation you've set up?
Yeah.
So those two are kind of the yin and yang of each other. So it's bold action, building a solid foundation, and that's relationally, financially, spiritually, if that applies to you, all of that stuff. The third one is right versus wrong. This one I kind of interpret as like everyone's got that conscience where if you see some trash on the ground and a garbage can right there, and your conscience says to pick it up and you just walk past,
Yeah.
that's the right versus wrong. And then the last one is human connection. So
Mm-hmm.
that's like the people you were friends with for a really long time. Neither one of you could really say why you stopped hanging out, but you just kind of drifted apart. And the
Yeah.
regret is, man, I wish I would have like reached out to this person. So those are the four. So for people who feel like they're trending towards regret in one of those areas, there's your golden ticket. So I guess for you, because you're talking about right now, I think you're totally in the building a foundation phase. And then it sounds like you have that foresight of the bold action phase following it. Your exact words were, I might do something crazy.
Yeah.
Are there any of those for you where you're like, ooh, that makes me think about, the right versus wrong, connection, bold action, building a foundation? Are there any of those where you feel you need to put more chips in the basket of?
I would definitely say socially. I am introverted, and when I'm gonna go hang out with someone, I get really stressed out and I psych myself out and I just dread it. But then it ends up being fine. I don't want to use it's like social anxiety, but I don't want to call it that because I don't want to like manifest that. But I just get like nervous about hanging out with people all the time. And so a lot of times I opt not to, which is the wrong choice for me. And so definitely socially, but also I think bold actions as well in a more fun side. I people would never guess this about me, but I'm like the most self-conscious, confident person you've ever met. I don't know. I get self-conscious around people my age, nobody else, but only if it's people my age, and not because I think they're gonna judge me or anything. I just have a hard time fitting in with people, the other college students, especially girls. I don't know what it is. And so I feel like that makes me less bold about things I'm gonna do in general, on the more adventurous side. So both of those things I think that I could definitely work on.
Yeah. Well, I will say too, part of like you're mentioning that throughout your childhood, people referred to you as an old soul.
Mm-hmm.
One component of that is like it for old souls, it is so much easier to converse and just like get along with people who are a little bit older because you do have that, even if it's not necessarily maturity, like I am a very like childlike human being. I love just like having fun and being a kid. But that was something I was referred to as was an old soul. And there's just something about this internal wisdom, if you want to call it that, where you connect with people with more life experience because maybe
Yeah.
they're willing to have those deeper conversations. I don't know what it is, but that might be it too.
Yeah. I'm glad you get it because I never know how to articulate it. But yeah, anyway.
I learned to articulate it because I lived that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I always say I hate small talk, but I'm cursed at being good at it.
Yeah.
So people think I like doing it, even though the whole time I'm doing it, I'm just sitting there like, man, tell me about like your deepest fears or like what your purpose is in life. Like that's the stuff I want to talk about. And that kind of leads me into, okay, so we went over the 50, the 100, kind of where you're at right now. Do you think through all of these experiences and being at school right now and learning whatever the heck it is you're learning. Do you think you are starting to etch in what you believe your purpose is?
Yes, I do. I do think my purpose is to help people. I don't know in what way, but I'm a spiritual person, so I just pray that I'll be guided and to like be directed to wherever I'm supposed to be. Like, I don't know, wherever the heavens and universe want me. And so, but I do feel like my purpose is in some way, somehow to help people.
All right. I think you'll be able to do that.
Thank you.
I mean, you've already done it, right? Like helping your dad. That to me, like the fact that the whole making him give you his water bottle to hold, like that, at least, at my ripe old age of 25, like that to me is, those are the things, they stick with you for a reason. So like for me, I always remember certain aspects of my childhood that very much lead into like who I am and what I find purpose in today as an adult. And so I think that is going to be such like a key part of your story moving forward. Like once you really find the like how your puzzle piece fits into the puzzle of service, like you're going to look back and be like, dang, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I'd be like that. Be like, and it's like when you look in hindsight and you're like, oh, that's why that happened. Okay.
Yep. All right. So we'll start to wrap it up here. I got a couple more questions for you. Towards the end, I like to just ask things out of sheer curiosity. And if
Okay.
listeners care, that's great. And if they don't, that's all right, because it's basically just a conversation. What, as someone who's like you were talking about, you're filming the documentary now, which we'll get into that side of things as well. But like you've kind of been in front of people who I'm sure ask a lot of questions about the race, about your dad, about your family, about your life. What's a question that you wish you got asked more that you don't?
Um, Honestly, I wish people would ask more about my mom because
Mm,
she is just the hustler. She is the heart of the project. She always says Lucy was like the brains and I was the workhorse. And like she just fills in all the gaps and she makes all the difference. She's the emotional support for James, but she's also like the adult, the more sound mind. She during the Conquer 100, she was only sleeping a few hours a week. I mean, a few hours a night. Um, and same thing with the 50, she just gets handed stuff and she is a super planner, whatever, and someone always ruins her plan and she is so tolerant and she just always makes anything happen, and she has some crazy stories and nobody even knows because people only ask about the fitness side of things,
mhm.
but there's just so much more to that, and I feel like that's what makes the biggest difference is the secret behind the scenes stuff that my mom does.
Yeah. Shout out to your mom.
Yeah.
So, no, and I think that's so true. So like, not the Conquer 100, but back in June, I did a 24-hour race that I set up just as a fundraiser. Because again, I have that mindset of like, I've done enough cool things to like feed my ego where I'm like, I don't need to just do races to prove I'm a badass, but like, I like doing it in terms of like fulfilling something in service by
Yeah.
bringing eyes to it through the fitness side of things.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about, the fitness aspect is what will make people like ooh and ah,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's what you can do with it that I think provides the real like power and sense of fulfillment. And so in setting up the fundraising portion, it was doing all of like the marketing quotes, getting like all of the pledges, making sure people actually paid the amount that they pledged after I just ran for 24 hours. And yeah, like people pretty much only asked about the actual race, and there was not really much about like the fundraising side of things or the prep side of things or like any of the back end stuff, which I think was 98% of it. And then the
Yeah.
actual race was like the 2% where you like show up and just do the
Just
thing.
the execution. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So I feel that. And yeah, so props to your mom. And like in the 50 documentary, because after our talk, I went and I watched that. it's very obvious and evident, even in like the background shots, or like I think it's called the B-roll.
Yeah.
It's obvious she's just like always like running around doing something, fixing something, taking care of someone. And so yeah, I'm glad you give credit where credit is due in that aspect. So what's something, because I think probably the grit aspect of like there is a way, I think that came from both of your parents. What's something that just your mom gave you through her actions throughout these crazy adventures?
I think she has shown me, she likes to use the term it's okay to be in the passenger seat. And so like people, obviously people love to be in the limelight, right? They love getting their credit, they love the accolades, right? Of course people are like, oh no, it's okay, but like, inside people love it, and so, but she she gets it more now because my dad publicizes a lot more. But before, like, she was just in the shadows all the time, and she was okay with it because she was just doing what she needed to do for our family. And so something that she has like been a great example of, it's okay to be in the passenger seat, and it's okay to be behind the scenes, and it's okay to just do it for other people with no selfish motivations.
Yeah, that is a lesson I'm continuing to learn, because like you said, there's the ego, and then there's the higher self, intuitive self, whatever you want to call this guy over here.
Yeah.
But it is so difficult when the ego gets like the tiniest foothold of accolades to just focus on the intuitive like fulfillment aspect of it. But that is something I'm learning more and more with every one of these events or whatever I'm putting on, or just even partaking in, that I get to have that crowd seat to the main event. Is the accolades will feel good. It's like a quick boost of like caffeine or something, where like
Yeah.
it feels really good for a very short period of time. But then the service aspect, like that stays for life. You will always be able to look
Yeah.
back on that feeling and get amped up
And
as to
have those
where the
relationships
what's that.
and have the relationships that you've built through that.
Yeah. So that's a phenomenal lesson. Now we'll kind of close the book here, but okay, so all of this being said, I want to give you credit for like all of the stuff that you did. Again, like even if someone did what you did as an adult, they'd get a lot of praise, respect, all that ego stuff we were just saying doesn't really matter, but it's still like give credit where credit's due. And the fact that you did all of that at the ages that you did it at is just truly phenomenal. So that's another reason I wanted to bring you on here slash back on here, is just like look you in the eyes and like give you credit for all of the crazy stuff you've just lined up and knocked down in your life.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It means a lot.
Yeah. And that being said, so there's going to be a documentary. It sounds like you're getting interviewed, so you're probably going to be in the documentary, I have to assume.
I don't know. Honestly, if I wasn't in it, I would not be surprised. So
Yeah.
we will see. Yeah.
Well, hopefully you make an appearance, but
We'll see. We can hope.
I'll be watching for it. So for this documentary, this is the project you worked on, Conquer 100 World Record. For people who don't know when and where it's coming out, when can people see it and where can they find it?
So it's still up in the air. There are a little bit of complications, but where the trailer has been revealed. It's just on my dad's Instagram, Iron Cowboy James. And we are hoping, fingers crossed, pretty sure it should be done around Christmas time this year. We're not sure where it's going to be yet, because that kind of comes once it's finished. People watch it and decide if they want to have it on their streaming systems or streaming platforms or whatever. But this December. So obviously we will be blasting it out on social media when it comes out. So you don't have to follow us. You can if you want, but if you don't want to, just check in December and there should be updates.
All right. I'm definitely going to be watching it. The 50 was a cool one, so I'm curious to see the sequel that is your family's
Yes.
crazy life.
Yes.
Crazy in the best way. Now, the last question, you may remember this, but I always end with the same question. And it's always just because I'm genuinely curious. For you, you're coming into, like you said, your last semester of school. And then what is, for you right now, the next step in you becoming your best self?
I am going to be looking for I'm going to be looking for a job that is more me. So I love social media influencer stuff. So if I could work for like some company that does something, I also love the beauty industry, but that could also be super toxic. But I'm just looking for the next step in my career that's different from what I'm doing now, just to diversify a little bit. But that's kind of the next big thing. So that will be coming this winter.
All right. Christmas time. You're gonna have a big Christmas.
It
All right.
is.
Very cool. I'm excited for you. And I may have some questions about the whole social media thing too, because obviously I lost an entire podcast. Me and technology.
So sad.
Oil and water. But thank you for coming back on. I appreciate it more than you know. I will have to get you some apparel as a token of my appreciation for you doubling back with me here. Last thing, for people who find you cool, think your story is exciting, where are some outlets people can either just follow what you're doing, see the Conquer 100 documentary footage or like stuff about it? Just throw down anything you want people to go check out or connect with. Let people know.
All right. First, my personal Instagram is just Lucy Jane, LucyJayne. I don't post that much, but you can add me if you want. I obviously the fitness, the side of things is Iron Cowboy James. IRONCOWBOYJAMES. And we have a book about the 50. It's just called Iron Cowboy Redefine Impossible. You can get it on ironcowboy.com or Amazon Prime, I think. The documentary is on Amazon Prime, the last one. But yeah, that's all. You can always just reach out to me on DMs or something if you want to chat.
Woo! All right.
Yeah.
Thank you again for everybody listening. Thank you so much for tuning in, especially if you made it all the way to the end here. If you liked this video, obviously, go ahead and click the like button. If there's stuff you agreed with, disagreed with, has questions about, have comments about, that's why there's a comment box. Throw it in there. And if there's someone who you know just loves craziness, is an ultra athlete, or just could benefit from anything that we talked about, that is why there's a share button. So thank you, everybody. Hope this helped. If not,
that's okay.
It definitely helped. So Lucy, thank you again. And for everybody listening, we will catch you next time. Peace.